When the organization Buffalo Field Campaign was being founded, one of the founders, Rosalie Little Thunder, said to other people who were organizing who were putting together the organization, we're going to spend 10% of our time working to save Buffalo and 90% of our time dealing with human drama. Now, fast forward many decades, and a couple nights ago, I'm having a conversation with a friend of mine who says, do you think people have always been this crazy and contentious and willing to lose friendships over trivia or over things that have nothing to do with them? That where people will, I don't know, take some absurd position and fight over it. And I told her the story that I originally read in Edward Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire of the Homoousions and the Homoousions. And my recollection of reading it was that the Homoousions were two groups of Christians in about the 4th century current era, somewhere in there. And they were fighting on the streets and killing each other in fairly great numbers. And there were on one side the Homoousions, and on the other side there were Homoousions with an umlaut over one of the O's. And one of the Homoousions, I never can remember which one, believed that the Holy Trinity was one being who was actually three. The other group, so the God, the Father, and the the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit were one being who had three manifestations. The other group, and remember they were killing each other over this. The other group believed that the Holy Trinity was three beings who were actually one. You can see the importance of this religious debate. And they also had another disagreement that was worth killing each other over, which was one group thought that the fires of hell were honest to goodness flames, like in a wood stove or in a fireplace. The other thought that the fires of hell were spiritual and metaphorical, and they didn't burn you physically, but they burned your spirit and your soul, causing evidently great agony. And they were killing each other over this. And they finally decided to get together and hash out their difficulties or their disagreements. They got together and had a big confab, synod, I think it was called. And they eventually decided to agree to disagree, each side in the full knowledge that the other would soon enough know whether the fires of hell were spiritual or physical. In other words, each side knowing that the other side was going to hell. And so this is the end of part one of this discussion, which is that, yes, I think humans have been contentious for a long time. And I've heard, you know, when Tecumseh was trying to rally a pan-Indian alliance, it's not just Westerners who can be this contentious. I mean, you read any history and you will see that this is pretty universal. And when Tecumseh was trying to rally a pan-Indian alliance to fight off the white invaders, he was often met with, well, thank you for asking. And because you are trying to do this, we will give you the honor of escorting you off of our land and not just killing you. But no, we will never work with you. And this goes to this day that old enmities continue. And now we're going to go another direction, which is there's something called Dunbar's number, which is the number of people that you can have in a community and still have direct relationships with everyone, which is about 120, 130, 150, 125, whatever, somewhere in that range. That beyond that, if you have a larger social structure, then it will be hierarchical and it will be a representative government as opposed to some sort of extended family structure. It will be, it is physically incapable. It is mentally, which means physically, incapable for humans to have a relationship with more than 120 people. Beyond that, you can't remember them. You can't have all those relationships, which any teacher knows too. You know, at some point you can teach a certain number of students, and beyond that, it becomes a blur of generalized students. Anyway, I actually think that the fact that humans are fundamentally contentious, and by the way, I think that humans are not the only ones who are contentious. I think that songbirds are probably contentious. I think the bears are certainly contentious. I think that bats, I have learned, are pretty contentious, by which I don't mean they fight, don't mean that they have to commit genocide, they don't have to do terrible things, but we poke at each other, you know? And no matter what relationship we have, we still sometimes snarl a little bit and get picky and persnickety. And I have become convinced that there is an evolutionary reason for this, which is that I believe that nature knew that humans gathering into groups of 1 million would be a terrible idea. And that terrible idea ecologically, socially. And so there's Dunbar's number that sort of tells us, you know, I think you should stay in smaller groups. And then beyond that, there's this fundamental contentiousness of, you know, we get to a larger group and then suddenly the Homoousions are literally killing each other. So maybe you need to divide out because, you know, really, I think I don't want to, this specific line is not one that, this is not a hill I'm going to die on, but I think that the beginning of the mega machine is the beginning of the end of the world. And the reason that's not a hill I'm going to die on is because it could have been slightly before that with sort of precursors of the mega machine. But what the mega machine is, Mumford talked about how, and I completely agree, and I've done videos about this, that the most important invention of the dominant culture is not the wheel, the screw, the lever. The most important invention of the dominant culture is the mega machine, which is a machine composed of humans who are replaceable. And so there's not a relationship, but instead, this is how you build the pyramids, which of course are giant tombs, is by having an army, a construction army, a hierarchical, bureaucratic, top-down hierarchical structure set up. And that's the most extraordinary thing, is to gather 100,000 people to accomplish one task and get past all their contentiousness. And it doesn't matter, Mumford makes this very clear, there's none of this original to me, makes it very clear that it doesn't matter whether that army is set up to run a railroad or build a giant tomb or run a timber company or sell Pepsi-Cola or to imprison and gas as many of the Jews in Europe as they can get a hold of. It doesn't matter. That bureaucracy will set up to do anything. And what it accomplishes is it brings people together despite all these differences. So you can have people within Microsoft, Coca-Cola, Weyerhaeuser, who some of them are maybe very far left, some of them may be very far right, some of them may have different attitude, different social, they may be Republican, Democrat, they may like different football teams. They may believe that God is three beings in one, and others may believe that God is one being in three, and it doesn't matter because they're still brought together to do this larger thing. In Weyerhaeuser's case, to deforest. In Pepsi Cola's case, to dewater and sell corn syrup. And so yes, I think that humans are fundamentally contentious, and I think we have always been like siblings in the back seat poking each other. And I think the worst thing that has ever happened to the planet is that we've somehow devised a social system to make it so we can get millions and millions of us to do one thing while we continue to poke at each other.